Alright, time for another draftphysics.com, debatephysics.com also. Video presentation. Thousands of them now. And some of them really shouldn't be arguments among reasonable people. But nonetheless, we're stuck with it. There's some things science says, that are doubtable. Dark matter does seem kind of contrived, the invention of some invisible matter, that doesn't interact with anything except gravity. It's the only manifestation of its existence is this one particular thing, and it doesn't do anything else. Seems a real reach, a desperate reach even. The fact that physics got plus and minus kind of misassigned and just left it broken, makes you wonder. Gives you some reason to question whether they really know what they're talking about. And this question of what energy is just so elemental, and the argument was always poorly phrased and never really took place in a theater. A proper way to have the argument is to have lots of people arguing, making arguments, not just have two or three people decide. The King and Newton and Leibniz, or Deschardelet, some publisher can afford to publish because they got lots of money, and so they tell everybody else what the truth is. And there's no one hears the counter argument because the counter argument isn't published for free. But lots of bad physics. The simplest fact you could just say is, physics says if I lift a weight and I decide to stop halfway and wait an hour, and I hold it for an hour and then I lift it some more, that I didn't really do work. In that whole period I was just holding it against gravity. That's not work. Work is only the motion. It's not the, And it's sort of just an obnoxious rebuttal against the idea that gravity is a constant force, and you're always doing work against it whenever, you're feeling its pressure. That's work. So whenever it's applying a weight to a surface, the surface is doing work. The earth is doing work, pushing you up, again, restoring your position. Gravity pushes you in, the earth pushes you back. That's all work. Gravity does work pushing you in, the earth does work pushing you back out. And there's no reason not to understand it. That simple fact. All right. And then the relationship between time and distance is just it's just a circumstantial relationship. Obviously, distance and how fast you traverse a distance is measured in time. There's a relationship there, but that's as far as it goes. It isn't some intrinsic thing where distance makes time or where time makes distance. Time is responsible. Gravity is a time-dependent force. It's happening per second. It's not happening per mile. Again, I've already explained, if something's moving towards the Earth at 500 miles an hour, and it's in Earth gravity, significant gravity, for 1 second, and it gets 9.8, let's say, that's all it gets is 9.8 added to the 500 miles an hour. Just gets 9.8. But I could drop something from the same position and have it travel the same distance, but only get its energy from gravity. And it'll be in the gravity for 10 seconds, and it'll have a velocity, of 100 meters per second. It won't be just 10, but the fact is the only difference is the time. The distance isn't relevant. It isn't meaningful as a fact. So anyway, the Ian Gosling has posted a video where he says gravity is a time-dependent force. Now, I don't think that's what he's going to argue. I don't think that's the position he's going to defend. He obviously doesn't believe it. He believes it does take 25 times the energy to go 5 times faster. He believes. He doesn't understand, but he believes. And so this is just more obnoxious, trivial mush, as a counter argument. It's on your epitaph, so to speak. I mean, anyone aware of these videos or anybody producing these, whatever they are, these pieces of garbage they claim to be some sort of counter argument, it's on your epitaph, frankly, that this is the best you could do. You're representing the capacity of human beings to get to the truth, and clearly you're showing you have no capacity. You can't deal with the actual arguments. You just do this distracting, trivial buffoonery, goofery, and that's all you have. That's the best you can provide. Instead of providing some sort of reasoned, rational explanation for how the bullet actually has 2,000 times the capacity to do work, well, 1,000 times the capacity to do work in the universe, that is to move matter, than the recoiling gun. So instead of dealing with those arguments, explaining how it works, you just keep doing this crap. Proving a point that intelligence isn't very useful in the hands of morons. Right? No point in having a little bit of it. A little bit is truly just dangerous. Okay. So we'll leave the video small because he's a very small person. Very small person. So he's doing some mockery voice.
And what we want to do is we want to see if we're swinging this way like this. And it hits something here.
Alright, so I was talking about free fall and gravity. Now, obviously a pendulum isn't free fall. And you could calculate that it has to swing, it has to go up and down. It has to fall slower than the actual free fall speed, because it's actually putting tension on a string and creating tension on a piece of it's creating other forces. There's other forces that are incidental to the fact that the pendulum is swinging. So it doesn't obey the time rule in the sense that you have to take into account the fact that the time it's falling, part of that time is energy going to the pivot point, the string, other factors that are being affected, by its movement. So the total amount of time has to increase because it's doing more work than just falling. So again, he takes a free fall argument and turns it into some other kind of argument, which it's not.
Say I had a spring here, or some machine here, and it's gonna...
So these are exactly the experiments he should be doing. So he stopped doing the experiments because I guess they would stop coming out his way. But clearly, it needs to be picked at. You need to take all of these experiments and really work at them. Do them over and over in little different changes. Make little changes, see what the little changes do. That's science. Science isn't saying, I'll do it once, if it comes out my way, I'm all done. That's not science.
Bring and bash into it like. I want to see how much work it do. If you want to compare it with one height, it should be one velocity, wouldn't it?
No, it's just, there's no point in this nonsense, right? Right, there's no point. I mean, we've already been over the fact that you accrue velocity. So to gain twice the velocity, an object has to be lifted to 4 times the height. It doesn't mean it has 4 times the energy. It just means that it needs 2 seconds in the gravity. It's how long you're in the gravity decides how much energy you're gaining in free fall. Again, that statement will never be undone by any of your nonsense and Joe foolery. Okay, you're not going to undo it as a truth.
Ground like, and then we go 4 times as high. We know that somebody's told us that. They've already fucking told us it. We go 4 times as high.
What the hell? You're just like. So it's the last video I'll watch. I mean, there's no point here. What is this crap? Oh, fuck.
Right, go twice as fast, right?
This is just a mockery of argument itself. He rejects the idea that you have to defend what you say. And so to evade having to defend what he says or what he claims to be true, This is what he's doing. So instead of explaining to you how it does take 25 times the fuel to go 5 times as fast, that does in fact make sense, instead of doing that, this is what he does.
But ignore it. They buggered off, right, so we don't know what fucking damage it do when it fucking come down here and swing and bang into that like that.
Okay, so we already did this experiment. He did a clay experiment. So he dropped a half mass from 4 times the height, meaning it now has twice the velocity. So a half mass with twice the velocity against a full mass with 1 unit of velocity. He did that experiment and it came out that it is equal energy, that the 4 times the height did not give it 4 times the energy. Just a fact. But he didn't show the experiment. And he didn't explain why the experiment was wrong. He just stated it was wrong.
Right. We've heard some fucking story. Somebody's been saying that it's a time-dependent force, right? Got nothing to do with the height. We lift the weight to...
Of course it has something to do with it. The height decides how much time it will have to fall. But the height isn't what gives it gravity. The time is what allows gravity to act on it. That's the simple argument. What is the cause and what is the effect? The velocity and the distance traveled is the effect. The cause is the time.
Time-dependent force, right? We're gonna compare the two theories, right, and see which one we think would be fucking right. All we can do is
It's just unwatchable.
fucking try and work it out, like, you know?
So he's bad enough with his own real voice and being articulate, and then on top of that he has to do whatever this is. Fuck.
So we lifted it up one night like that, right? And we thought, before we did it, we tried to use up brains, right?
Alright, look, the point is that he's claiming that I can take a half mass and give it just 0.4 more velocity, and it will now do twice the work. I mean, the fact is that it will now do the same work as a full mass going 1 velocity. That I just have to give 0.4 extra velocity. So it doesn't need more momentum. It can do the same work as something else in terms of its momentum without having the momentum, without being required to go twice as fast.
Look out like it fucking would work, like. We think, like, we lift it one out like that, and let it swing and smash in there, right? And then if we were to do it from 4 times as hard, right? And we think, well, what would fucking happen?
It weighs twice as much. 4 times is twice the velocity. It weighs twice as much. It compresses the spring twice as much. That's what happens.
We would think, right, that, well, we would know that they would be in the gravity force. When we let go of it there, right, it's in the gravity force, we would know from the both positions, right, it would be in gravity at the same time, wouldn't it? We would know, wouldn't we? That it would be in the stream of gravity the same amount of time in both positions.
What does that even mean? I mean, how could there be the same amount of time? It's 4 times the height, and it's even more in terms of linear distance. How could that make any sense?
So if we were to predict what would happen, what would we say?
So this was already done. Again, the statement was already made over and over again. It's twice the weight. You want it to weigh the same, then you put a half mass 4 times as high, and it does exactly what the experiment you covered up produced as a result, which is exactly the same compression of the clay.
If it's a time-dependent force.
So, I mean, Leibniz says that lifting 4 pounds 1 foot is the same energy as lifting 1 pound 4 feet. Now, obviously that's claiming that because it's dropping 4 units of distance when it hits the ground, it weighs 4 pounds. When, no, it doesn't.
and it's in gravity the same time.
So I don't even know what he's talking about. It's in gravity the same time. It's not falling in the gravity. It has to fall in the gravity to accrue velocity. You don't understand that part? That when you're holding it, it's not accruing any velocity? Can't gain velocity when you're holding it against the gravity. You're absorbing all the energy. The energy isn't in the object. It's not staying in the object. It's going in your arm and down into the earth. You don't understand that? I mean, it's just, this is so pathetically stupid. I just, hello, Internet. There's something pathetically stupid happening on the Internet here. I just can't believe that no one will show up and say, hey, wait a minute, this is pathetically stupid. Why don't we have a rational conversation about the nature of energy?
Then the work it does, or the force it imparts on the collision, the amount of energy it must store, we would say it would be the same, wouldn't we? Spinning with gravity the same time.
Just amazing. I'm sorry, it's an amazingly stupid statement. It's not about how high you are from the Earth that decides how much gravity you have in the first place. How much gravity you have really just has to do with the same thing that decides how many photons hit you from a light bulb. It just has to do with how close you are to the light bulb. That's the inverse square law. So you really don't get this at all.
From here or from there, we would predict it would do the same damage, wouldn't we? Got the same.
Who would predict that? I don't. Who are you talking to? What are you talking about? So he puts things at two different heights. That is, they have more time to, say, fall in the gravity, and he's claiming they should somehow do exactly the same thing, even though one was in the gravity much longer. And that makes sense to him. Moron.
Well, does it? Of course it wouldn't, would it? We did the experiment. Does anybody think from here or from there with the same weight would do the same damage? No, of course not.
Right, so who are you arguing with? That's not my theory. It doesn't have a damn thing to do with anything I talked about, anything I described, or anything I drew. So what is this other than just slander? I mean, is there some other argument somebody could make that you haven't done anything but just slander? This isn't anybody's argument. You're not arguing with anyone. You're making a this isn't a straw man. This is a Twinkie man. Okay, you're making shit out of candy. You're just showing that you're a fake and a phony, but you can't even make a real argument disputing the real arguments made to you. You're such a despicable coward.
We'd do a lot more from 4 times the height, wouldn't it?
It's twice as much as the argument, as your experiment proved that you wouldn't show. As Brozo's experiment proves, frankly.
Twice the velocity. So immediately you can...
Well, let's just say shows. It shows that to be a correct result. Okay.
Say that trying to predict by saying the time dependent force wouldn't work, would give you a fucking arse crack over fuck.
So whatever that is, it wouldn't work when, okay, I described it in about 7 different ways in yesterday's videos. Described all the different ways that it fits perfectly. Okay, you're flying by a gravitational body. What's going to decide how much you're bent? The slower you go, the more you're bent. The faster you go, the less you're bent. What is that indicating? It's indicating that it's how much time you're in the force, the rain. It's the same argument as rain. You're basically just saying, look, there's a rain. I'm going to decide to run across the rain. I'm obviously going to get wetter if I walk slower across the cloud. I walk faster through the cloud, I get less wet. Just obvious. Clearly indicating it's a time-dependent force. Your counter-argument to that argument is what? How does the fact, and it's an absolute fact, that it seems very connected to how fast I move the distance. Not the distance. The distance doesn't matter. It seems to be completely dependent on how fast The time component. The time component decides, not the distance.
Fucking tits wank fucking stain my answer, wouldn't it? Wouldn't have to do any experiments. Use fucking brain, like what God give us.
Oh, brother. He thinks there's a God that made this creature. Yeah. Sorry. I think if there was a God, okay, he'd be pro-abortion.
So, fucking time-dependent force in the gravity the same time for both fucking weights.
So honestly, they.
Drops,
I mean,
same
this.
time in
What?
gravity.
What's he talking about? How are they in the gravity at the same time? One of them has to do exactly what the other one does, plus a whole bunch of extra. They obviously can't be in the gravity at the same time. That's ludicrously stupid. I just can't believe this is the best you assholes can do. I mean, this isn't dumber than a flat Earth argument. It really isn't. You're a viewer. You're honestly going to look at this video and you're going to say, do flat earthers make videos responding to points that are dumber than this? More off the subject, more nonsensical, more idiotic? No, they don't. This is a whole realm of low. And here, these are the people defending conventional physics. This is the best they can bring to the table. They can't link to anything. They can't show you the evidence. They can't show you any piece of evidence that gives you even the slightest indication that it does take 25 times the fuel to go 5 times as fast. Not anything that even shows it's even close to being the truth. And yet they believe it, and they'll assert it, and they'll mock anybody who disagrees with that religious statement that Jesus walked on the water. Jesus says it takes 25 times the fuel to go 5 times faster. Jesus says.
That ain't gonna work, is it? So we better fucking measure the height, and that fucking show us there's a difference in.
Oh, see, just too ridiculous. Too ridiculous. I'm sorry, it's just ridiculous. We know the path. The path is going to be twice as long. The thing will travel twice the distance. And 4 times the height is going to be twice the literal distance. The path, the amount of space it will traverse will be exactly twice as much, not 4 times as much. What an idiot.
We don't need any fucking experiments to fucking show that one has fucking ideas, right?
Yeah, whatever. I just can't believe this video is this stupid. Can't believe it. It's beyond, it's like I said, I thought human beings were kind of scummy and lowbrow and moronic, but they just keep educating me to the fact that they're a lot worse than I thought. I mean, besides the psychos, the lunatics, that really can't come anywhere close to the subject. This.
An ass over fucking tit.
It's amazing. I'm just. So there's just, you can't pay physicists, you can't extort them, you can't put text on your video pointing out that they're cowards and they still won't show up to make the argument. No matter what you do, you cannot drive these people to counter argue simple things. I mean, just simple diagrams of reality, and they won't come anywhere near them. Again, gravitational body. Just make your counter argument. Explain how this is showing how it's about distance. Just explain how it's possible that it's about distance. And so we know that gravity is basically happening here, and it's of different strengths, right? So the closer you are, that's a little bit stronger. It's a little weaker out here, but you're further away. But that's really kind of irrelevant to the point. You're going to travel a path through the gravity. And the simple argument is that I think even a little kid can understand that the force, whatever it is, bent geodesic, it doesn't matter what you make this out of, the thing called gravity. bent space, bent fabrics, bent sheets, bent pillowcases, whatever you want to make it out of. Now I say it's a real force, little bits of energy, and there's more of them coming this way than come back this way. And you're just going to travel through that force field, that field of force. And the fact is that the absolute fact is that all it's not going to, this distance doesn't make any difference. The thing that's going to make the difference is how fast are you going to travel that distance. And if you travel it very slowly, you're going to crash. You travel a little faster, you might get yourself into a partial orbit. You travel a little faster, you just get bent a little. And you travel very fast, and you'll barely get nudged the tiniest little bit this way, because you'll be in the force an inadequate amount of time. Enough of these things won't have time to hit you, as if it was rain. You'll just get less wet, and that's all that can happen. So his counter argument to that theory is mockery. Alright, so I guess I might as well just go through a couple of these little arguments, just to clarify, make sure. So there's just the simplest way you can deal with gravity is to allow no friction, no anything. You just allow something to free fall. Okay, and those rules are well established, and it's clearly just about the time. In the first unit of time, you travel 1/4 of your whole trip. And in the second unit, the second, you do 3/4 of your trip. Okay, that's Galileo's 1 to 3 relationship. Not very hard to figure out. Okay, and it's just because it's a crude velocity. You travel a distance of 4.9 here in 1 second. In the second, okay, in the second unit of time, you'll do 3 units of 4.9, okay, which will add up to 2 units of 9.8. All right, and that's how it works. And the same thing happens when you roll an object on the ground. It does exactly the same thing. It goes half its velocity 3/4 of the way down the track. It's going half its velocity right here. It's going 9.8 right here, 1/4 of the fall, and then it's only going, you know, the 19.6 here at the bottom. So half the speed is here, way up here. Okay, half the speed is way here. Then Galileo put things on ramps to slow them down so he could actually watch this happening. Okay, you could have little bells ring, and you could tell by the time between the bells ringing. So what's happening? This object doesn't fall at the free fall rate. Okay, this velocity is going to be acquired over a much larger period of time. The whole idea is to slow things down. But what does that mean when you slow it down? Well, it means you're adding a whole bunch of extra force. So you don't have, when it gets to the bottom here, it doesn't have the object here, doesn't have all of the energy. The ground has a whole pile of the energy. Okay, so the extra time went into the ground. All right, and you end up with a velocity this way that's going to be the same as your velocity that would have been down if you just dropped the object. So what it's basically doing is just converting this way into this way, and it's using this force, this extra time. It's time plus to do this, and all the plus is here. This is the plus. So a pendulum is doing the same thing. When you have a pendulum swinging, it's not a free fall time. The time won't be the same. This swing will take time plus, because what are you doing? You're putting a force here against this pivot. Okay, there's a force being applied there. There's a force in this, some elasticity, no doubt. And so you have the extra time will be directly, this little extra plus in time will be directly consumed by the force in the string and the force on the pivot, well, and the force on the ball too. Those frictions are now in the equation. These are frictions. They're consuming some of the energy that you're gaining from being in gravity longer. But the longer gravity isn't going to produce anything in the ball's motion, because all the plus, the extra time, was here and here and here and here. All that force didn't go into making this. It was used up like this in vibrating the ground. It didn't make the ball go faster. It didn't give it more of this. The extra time did this instead. So that you have to understand the difference between free fall and friction fall. If you're applying any friction and you end up with a result where you have the same amount of velocity, even though the directions change, it's the same velocity, well then you know it had to take more time because you had to gain more energy from the gravity to do that experiment. It can't take the same time because you've used up some of the energy. Now if you throw something off a cliff, there's no friction. You're not taking energy. Nothing's absorbing the energy. All you have is some slight atmospheric effects, very minor. And so this object will drop the same time as this object, as this object, as this object, as this object, because there is no source of anything taking the energy. There's no friction. Substantial friction. Meaningful. Statistically meaningful friction. Alright. But I mean, what? Just you know, there's just nothing to say. It's just such a dismal prospect communicating with scummy humans. I mean, obviously, humans are just disgusting abusers of intelligence. Users, abusers, squanderers. They just have no appreciation for the value of intelligence and the value of correct answers. And you're just despicably creepy, shitty pieces of crap that you can't argue any of the arguments at all. Oh, God. Get what you deserve, you fuckers. And your spawn likewise.